The story of Elbert Henry Gary, lawyer, judge, organizer, executive. Born in 1846 on his father's farm near Wheaton, Illinois, Gary as a boy was studious, painstaking, and conscientious. After attending Wheaton College, at the age of 18, he became a school teacher. One day his uncle, Colonel Henry Vallette, a lawyer, was visiting the Gary home.
Well, Elbert, how's the young pedagogue getting along?
Oh, I'm fine, thanks, Uncle. But please don't call me a pedagogue. I'm just a country school teacher, and not a very good one at that.
Don't you believe him, Henry. I tell you, he makes the youngsters toe the mark, especially in arithmetic. By the way, you consider yourself a pretty good mathematician, don't you, Henry?
Well, now, I don't like to brag,
I'll
but
bet that Elbert can beat you.
Oh, now, Father.
I ran across a very neat little problem the other day. Now, let's see which one of you can solve it first. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Well, sure, now, go ahead.
All right, here it is. If a hen and a half lays an egg and a half in a day and a half, how many eggs will 6 hens lay in 7 days?
Why, that's elemental. 42, of course.
No, Uncle Henry, you're wrong. If a hen and a half lays an egg and a half in a day and a half, one hen will lay 1 egg in a day and a half. 6 hens will lay 6 eggs in a day and a half, or 4 in 1 day. In 7 days, they lay 7 times 4, or 28 eggs.
Elbert's right. You see, Henry, I said that he could beat you.
Oh, shucks, that's not a problem in mathematics. That's an example of pure reasoning, logic. Yes, well thought out, though, Albert. You ought to make a good lawyer.
I should like to be a lawyer, Uncle Henry.
Then why don't you come into my office and read law?
Uncle Henry, you mean that?
Why, sure. Why not? What do you think of the idea, Rastus?
All right. Elbert may have a little property someday, and the knowledge of the law will help him to keep it.
But I want more than that, Father. I want to really be a good lawyer. And someday, perhaps, I can be a judge.
Gary's ambition was realized in 1882 when he was elected judge of DuPage County, serving for 2 terms. He established his own corporation law practice in Chicago, and in 1892, John W. Gates engaged him to organize the $4 million Consolidated Steel and Wire Company, which eventually was combined with several other competitive plants and 6 years later was capitalized for $12 million. But Gary had the vision to realize that a combination embracing all the various units concerned in the production and marketing of steel would result in enormous economies and unprecedented efficiency. To accomplish this end, he persuaded J.P. Morgan and Company to furnish the necessary capital. And the result was the $200 million Federal Steel Company.
Judge Gary, you have put this thing together in really good shape. Now, you must be president of the company.
I appreciate your offer, Mr. Morgan, but I couldn't think of accepting.
Why not?
Well, I have a law practice in Chicago that's worth $75,000 a year.
That's quite all right. We'll take care of that. You can fix your own salary. Select the directors of the company and name the executive committee.
Well, my salary would be $100,000 a year.
All right.
Then I have certain ideas about the conduct of the business that may not meet with unqualified approval. This organization has great potentialities, either for good or evil. Within this corporation are mining companies which produce the iron, coal mines and coke ovens to furnish fuel, railroad and steamship lines to provide transportation, mills to transform the iron into steel, and plants where the metal is fabricated into rails and wire, nails, girders, and many other commodities. Now, these different units must all operate in harmony, or the objects for which this company was formed will not be attained.
Well, that will be your job, Gary.
Exactly. And in order to accomplish it, I must insist on certain radical changes of business policy. For instance, the practice of accepting rebates and other concessions from the railroads is wrong, and it must be stopped. Another thing, some companies in the past have formed pools for the purpose of securing unfair advantages over their competitors. This is unethical and must be discontinued.
Unethical? Whoever heard of ethics in the steel business?
Well, you'd like to run this corporation like a Sunday school.
I want to run this corporation according to the golden rule. We must be fair to everyone, the public, our competitors, our stockholders. I purpose issuing quarterly statements showing the true condition of the business, whether good or bad.
That's unheard of.
To the dickens with the stockholders.
They've invested their money, and they have a right to know the facts. And above all, I intend to be fair to labor.
The only way to deal with labor is whenever it shows its head, hit it.
Then you'll have to get someone else to do the hitting. I wish to make it possible for our employees to invest in the stock of the company. I want to improve labor conditions, abolish the 7-day week, and eventually the 12-hour day.
Judge Gary persisted in his revolutionary policy of the golden rule in business. When in 1901, the great Carnegie Company, vast Rockefeller holdings in Orleans, and several other large steel plants were combined with the Federal to form the United States Steel Corporation, Judge Gary continued as head and directing manager of the $1,400,000,000 organization. A stupendous task welding these many previously antagonistic units into one harmonious cooperating institution. But Gary accomplished it. Friday, May 7th, 1915. A majestic ocean liner is on the last leg of her voyage from New York to Liverpool. The green fields of the Emerald Isle greet the vision of the passengers as they stroll the decks shortly after lunch. Suddenly, a tremor passes through the great ship.
Extra! The Lusitania torpedoed over 1,000 lives lost.
President Wilson sends out a protest to Germany.
Germany threatens unrestricted submarine warfare. Extra! Germany plots to give Texas and Arizona to Mexico.
Extra! America severs diplomatic relations with Germany.
3 American steamers torpedoed by German submarines. Extra! Extra! America declares war! War!
Steel for tennis.
We need steel for rifles.
For shells. Steel for rails.
For tanks.
We need steel for ships. We need steel.
Steel!
Steel. Steel.
Steel! Steel!
The entire industry was organized on a war basis by the government with Judge Gary at its head. To keep America and her allies supplied with the enormous quantities of steel products required was an Herculean task, but Gary accomplished it and ruthlessly fought all attempts at profiteering. Prices to the government were far lower than prices in the open market. After the strenuous and hectic activities of the war period had subsided, Judge Gary was able to resume a fight that the great conflict had interrupted. His fight on behalf of the laboring man. At a meeting of the presidents of a number of subsidiary companies, he said,
Gentlemen, since the formation of this corporation, a great deal has been accomplished on behalf of the thousands of men and women in our employ. 6 days instead of 7 now constitute a week's work. Millions of dollars have been spent outright for schools, playgrounds, libraries, and hospitals for our workmen. Provision has been made for the proper care of the injured and the relief of their families, for sickness and old age, and the purchase of homes. A great industrial city has been built, which, I'm proud to say, bears my name, and which is a model for all the world. But, gentlemen, a very important reform remains to be accomplished. I refer to the abolishment of the 12-hour day.
I cannot understand this agitation for an 8-hour day. The men themselves are not in favor of it. They would enjoy less freedom under that system. They object to being hurried in order to produce a reasonable output.
As a matter of fact, none of them work for 12 hours continuously. Between heats, they play cards, sleep, read, eat, or amuse themselves in various ways until the whistle calls them back to the furnace.
But the 12-hour day, with the time consumed with going back and forth from work, leaves no waking hours for the family, the church, citizenship. It keeps the men from outdoor life. It's unsocial and unhealthy.
A change from 2 to 3 shifts a day would mean a big increase in expenses. We should either have to raise prices to which the public would object, cut wages to which the workmen would object, or reduce profits to which our stockholders would object.
And remember your own words, Judge. We must be fair to the public, to our stockholders, and to our workmen.
Nevertheless, the 12-hour day has got to go.
How about our competitors? After all, this corporation represents less than 50% of the steel business of the country.
Here's the solution to that problem. I've received a letter from President Harding in which he offers to call a meeting of executives of the entire industry for the purpose of discussing this very matter. I'm certain, gentlemen, that if the United States Steel Corporation offers to eliminate the 12-hour day in all of our plants, that our competitors will not refuse the request of the President of the United States to do the same.
The 12-hour day was finally abolished. The change was accomplished with the minimum of disturbance to either wage or price schedules. Judge Gary's long, busy, and useful life ended in New York, August 15, 1927. Tributes were paid to his fine character, his scrupulous honesty, his great talents as a business executive and economic statesman by men in the highest walks of life. Elbert Henry Gary, Captain of Industry.